Welcome to Audience First, a podcast for tech marketers looking to break out of the echo chamber to better understand their audience and turn them into loyal customers. Every week, Danny Wolf has brutally honest conversations with busy tech buyers about what really motivates them, the things they hate that vendors do, and what you can do about it. Get access to practical information on how to build authentic relationships with your audience. Listen to and talk with your buyers, and apply real customer insights to your strategies and tactics. You owe it to the world to unmute your mic. Are you ready?
All right, welcome to another episode of Audience First. Today's going to be an awesome episode because I have two rock stars in the house. I have Avishai Wool and I have Josh Copeland in. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Hi, Danny. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Danny.
All right, I want to start with the question that I ask all of my guests. Tell me, who are you, what do you do, and why the hell do you do it?
I'm Avishai Wool. I'm AlgoSec CTO, co-founder. Have been doing that for the past 20-something years, probably close to 25. Been working in network security since that time, plus a bit more. Still keeps me excited because so many new things are popping up all the time.
All right, well, thanks for coming again. Josh, how about you? What do you do, and why do you do it?
So I'm a VCISO currently and also adjunct professor at Tulane University. Love doing cybersecurity because it keeps everything fresh. You know, you sleep 2 days and a year has gone by in cybersecurity time. So it's one of those things that keeps me actively engaged mentally. So love cybersecurity.
Now, both of you mentioned fresh, new, always moving. I'm curious to know, and this is the moment where I pull on the thread just a little bit in the episode. I do this regularly on all my episodes. What's happened recently that's changed in the space that has kind of intrigued you or got you curious or kept you on your toes, if anything? I know that's kind of a question out of left field, but you both intrigued me with the same kind of response.
So for many years, our customers were traditional enterprises having their enterprise data centers, protecting their networks using traditional means, network filtering technologies, firewalls and VPNs and so forth. And over the last, probably 10 years, let's say, but certainly more rapidly over the past 5 years, we've seen a huge change in technology that comes in multiple different names. One of them is moving to the cloud. So organizations are moving in a major way to using infrastructure as a service platforms, AWS, Azure, GCP, and so on. And that move has driven the security practice to go after them, and technologies of how you defend the cloud-based environment are quite different from what you do for an on-premise environment. So even though, if you look at it from like an auditor's point of view, if you look at it from a PCI auditor point of view, it's all the same. Data is data. It lives where it lives, and the risks are the same. But taking it one level deeper as to the how, you find out that the technology stack is quite different, and the tooling is quite different, and the oversight toolings are quite different, and the needs are different, and the what is basically fundamentally the same, but the how is quite different. So first of all, it's fascinating to watch and to be part of. And secondly, it poses all kinds of challenges for AlgoSec as a technology vendor, because our customers are changing their environment, and we need to be on that journey with them or slightly ahead of them so that we can provide them with the value that we've always provided using their previous technologies.
For me, I think one of the interesting things is the regulation and regulatory evolution as we kind of see regulations try to keep up with technology and the second and third level impacts of those things. You can look at things like CMMC or the SolarWinds SEC ruling where they're holding the CISO accountable. All these things fundamentally change how we do business within cybersecurity. And to Avi's point, we have to figure out how to apply these things that are typically, a couple of years behind what's current and figure out how we're going to do that for this new thing that is not currently regulated, that is not, fully well understood. And AI is a great example. What are we doing with regulating AI? Well, right now, not a whole lot, but we still have to protect all the things that go into that and all of the kind of intellectual property and pieces and parts that, might be critical to your organization because to Avi's point, data is data. It doesn't matter if it's sitting in your data center, a cloud environment, or an AI, learning model. It's data. You still have to protect it.
One thing that pops up with me with new things occurring or the space always changing is our behaviors, our technologies largely change also because of threats changing, because of motivations of threat actors changing or becoming more sophisticated. Is it like, is it chicken and egg? Meaning like what comes first, the motivation and the way threat actors behave change or technology changes and as such the motivations and the threat actor behavior changes. What do you think is the first factor here that is causing threat actor motivation changes or technological changes? Does that make sense?
Well, certainly makes sense as a question, specifically for the kind of change that I was talking about, which is shifting to cloud environments. Um, my analysis is slightly different. I would say that this change is not driven by threats at all. I think it's driven by upper management giving their organizations guidance that, okay, thou shall work in the cloud, go. Um, and then everybody's scrambling to get that mandate filled. Now, if you ask me why the CIOs and CEOs are giving this mandate for the last 5 to 10 years, then okay, initially the answer used to be it seems to be a cost reduction mechanism. Recent years have kind of indicated that's not really much of a cost savings because renting computers is not necessarily cheaper than owning them. Um, but you do get a lot of agility, flexibility, speed in going to market and making things work faster um, than was possible using old technologies, and I think that's still valid. So that's why there was this drive to go there. From my position, I'm this is slight speculation on my part. I'm not 100% sure why the CIO of corporation XYZ decided to have a mandate that all new deployments should be in the cloud and we are going to shut down 2 of our 5 data centers. These things are happening. I know they're
Mhm.
for a fact that they're happening because the people we talk to have to deal with the consequences of those decisions. If we look at the state of network security, like biologists look at nature, then it's a phenomenon. It's happening, and we can think about why, but it's more important to think about what do we do with it.
Well, what are some of the key challenges in network security and just in protecting networks within cloud environments that you're experiencing? Josh, maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, particularly with cloud environments, it's just truly understanding what you have, what all interacts with it, and how are you going to protect that. 15 years ago when you had data centers, you had very, very clear cut, this is my perimeter. I can put all kinds of tools around that to protect it and kind of have the, you know, analogy of, the eggshell around the soft, squishy middle. With cloud, you lose that really clear, defined ability to say, this is my network, this is not. Because depending on what your access controls are, you can access that from anywhere from any computer, from any device, whether it be a mobile phone or a laptop or a huge data center somewhere in the world. Now you've kind of expanded that boundary to a whole bunch of other devices. And then your security posture in turn has to consider all these other devices. I'm able to log into my Azure account from my personal laptop. Previously I would be sitting in a data center using my company provided equipment that has all the controls and policies in place on it. How do you understand and protect things when you have lost control to a degree of all the things that are connecting to it? And that changes kind of fundamentally how you protect things, from building these nice walls and concentric circles around your data to truly figuring out how to protect the data itself or the application that data resides in.
I'd like to point out how Josh said, I can access my Azure account from my home computer. Okay. That statement deserves qualification. I mean, you can do that because whoever configured the Azure environment that you're connecting to has either implicitly or explicitly allowed you to do that. And in many cases, it was allowed due to oversight. Whoever configured that environment didn't think that they needed to do something special to allow Josh to connect to that environment only from company equipment and only from particular locations in the world. And there's tooling there from Microsoft or from third parties that could make that statement completely wrong. And except that whoever set up the system either was not aware that there's a possibility, or they didn't realize that they need to configure it, or they didn't know how to configure what they have. The big difference when you move to the cloud is that the set of things that potentially can help protect you is a lot bigger, like orders of magnitude more stuff to think about than what you used to do in the past. And different people that were completely not used to thinking about such things all of a sudden should, and maybe they don't even realize that they got that job. To give you a little example, like in the old days, like 5 years ago, when I had a file system, a shared file system in my organization, I had a file server sitting in my data center, and every employee could mount that on their laptop. I didn't have to worry about having any kind of access to that thing from anywhere in the world because it was simply not accessible. It was a disk, and to connect a disk, you need a computer, and to connect and to have that computer connected to that disk, it needed to be on the same local area network, which was in a physical place somewhere and is, in a building that has a LAN, that has a firewall, that has, all these layers of defense around it sort of by default. And then the person that configured the storage system, it never crossed their mind that they need to permit or disable access from China. It just wasn't a topic of conversation. Whereas now, if you're using an S3 bucket or an EBS volume on AWS, that thing, in principle, is accessible from anywhere in the world, independently of which computers have it mounted that you wanted them to. And whoever's configuring thing needs to know that they need to select all the boxes that say this is internal, this is only here, this requires access control, and 17 other things that you need to worry about.
I want to get prescriptive here. So, how do you recommend one thinks about this approach and shift to the cloud? And what should they do to address security between the different cloud providers and environments as well?
I think that people should realize, if they haven't realized so far, that that there's a lot of stuff that needs to be controlled, all kinds of controls, and they keep changing. Amazon and Microsoft and Google are innovating all the time, so just adding more and more and more capabilities and more controls. Um, and people need to realize that no matter how much they think they know, they don't know all of it, and they need help. And to get help, there's whole markets of tools out there that provide help. So your absolute basic fundamental thing is what's called the CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management System, that helps you understand that you're at least checking all the basic boxes. That you didn't forget that you need to worry about access control, or that you need to worry about things being allowing everything. And they follow CIS benchmarks and all kinds of guidelines from Amazon, from Microsoft, and so on. If you don't have that, you're blind. You must have that.
Hmm.
And then look at what it says, and you'll probably be shocked to see that you have many things misconfigured that you didn't realize were even there and that you needed to configure them. So start with that and then work your way up.
Yeah. To Avi's point, we can look at something as simple as S3 buckets. When that first came out, by default, it was accessible to everyone. That was the default configuration. Like, and you just didn't think about it. You're like, okay, I'm making this thing and it's doing the thing that I want it to do. And it was truly about having a capability to do something, not necessarily thinking about security on top of being able to do the thing you want to do. And there are lots of great, tools that you can use. CIS benchmark that Avi mentioned, cloud specific, NIST 800-171 is, kind of that go-to, very prescriptive, go here, click this button, check this setting. But ultimately it's truly understand the tool that you're using. Anything that you get when you take it out of the box, boot it up and, set it off the first time is not going to be secure. That's just the nature of the business. You get your new Windows laptop, power that on, go through all the update cycles, and then compare that to the CIS benchmarks. And you have like 300 benchmarks that aren't met, that it's in a insecure state and allows insecure things. Well, if that's something that you see for something as simple as a laptop, imagine what that's doing for a massive cloud environment where you have dozens, if not hundreds of devices running in there, including virtualized firewalls and all these other pieces and parts to make your virtualized environment work. Understand, vendor checklists that say, verily, this is how you secure my device. Look at these things that are readily available and kind of take those first steps and go, let me do the easy things of these are the things that smart people have said I need to do, and look for
Hmm.
that first. And then you can roll into buying additional tooling that'll do deeper dive audits of your environment and find all these, buried 6 layers deep. Oh, you clicked it here, but you didn't click it here. So basically it's not functioning right. And kind of evolve yourself that way, take a very iterative approach, because ultimately bad actors go for low hanging fruit first. If you're the guy who just spins something up and lets it go, they're absolutely going to go after you.
Hmm.
One of the experiments I do with my students is, okay, go create a, virtual machine. I don't care if it's Azure or AWS, and make it public facing and put a packet monitor on it and see how long it is before you start getting bad actors hitting that machine. I guarantee you it'll be less than 24 hours.
Oh, I thought you were going to say less than 10 minutes.
I mean, I have seen as little as 3 minutes
There you
before
go.
a bad actor hits it.
Yeah, I mean, there's automatic tooling that just scans everything. Especially if you put up something that has a web interface that responds to HTTPS or something like that, people are going to start banging on it minutes after that power is up. Yeah. I want to touch upon one thing that Josh said that's very true, and I think is worth reiterating, and that is the issue of default. So when you power up something, and it could be an S3 or a security group in AWS or lots of other things that that you have that could protect you, you need to be aware that by default that thing's not protecting you, or not properly, because the vendor, when they give you the tool, their primary motivation is to make sure that it works for you. So it's going to default open. It's going to be by default permissive, so that whatever you need it to do, it will be able to do. And you can see that even for security control. So you look at, the default settings of an Amazon security group, and by default, it allows all traffic outbound. That's the default setting for years, which is totally insecure and unnecessary, but it's easy. If you start, when you configure that, if it was by default block everything, then you'd power up your machine and it would not be able to communicate properly with what it needs to communicate. And then you'd have to work on fixing it, which slows you down. Now, if you think about it, if you take the analogy back to the old world, if you wanted to put up a system that has access to the internet, you would need to get somebody's permission. You would get somebody from IT to set it up for you. You get, go through a process. It would be documented. Somebody would open up something in the firewall rules to allow that connectivity to happen. It'll take, for quick organizations, a few hours, and for slow organizations, it could take a month until you go through all these processes, and then your boss is angry with you. But it would be pretty secure. If you go to Amazon, your garden variety engineer can, within 5 minutes, set that up, and it will work. Just won't be very secure, but it will work really fast. So I think we're kind of at an unstable point of how organizations have built their operating processes around using the cloud. Right now, it's a little bit still kind of a Wild West situation where everybody is doing what they want to do and not too much law and order is in place. And I'm willing to bet that if you pull Josh and I into another meeting like this in 5 years or 10 years, maybe things will be different, and the adults will tell these people to, calm down because it's insecure.
Remind me to touch base with you offline to schedule that meeting 5 years down the road. So
Definitely.
we get it in the books. Well, speaking of the organization, where do you see the greatest risks associated with cloud security?
I think the biggest risk with cloud security is you don't know what you don't know. And it's really, really easy to do cool things in the cloud and spin things up and use all this new technology that's out there. But if you don't truly understand it first, you're going to bring this cool thing in. It's going to do cool things. But to Avi's point, it's by default insecure. You just don't necessarily know what the second and third order effects of doing that is going to be if you're not very iterative and prescriptive in how you're doing things. I liken this back to, I'm going to show my age, 20, 30 years ago, when, the internet really started to happen, business really started getting into computers, and you had whoever the smart guy in the room was, or gal, or person, that was building things, and they were building capabilities. I want to be able to do this. So that they're like, we want to have email. So they build an email server, and they've got email relays that are just default out of the box, but they have email, and they're able to do the things they want to. But because they were not a security person and they didn't go, well, what's the proper way to do this? The focus was just get it to work. Now you have them email relays out there that are being used by bad actors because they can, because you didn't even attempt to stop them. And we're now kind of in that same scenario with cloud, where you have lots of people who are just the smart guy or person in the room who is building this thing to make it work. And making it work is what the priority is. give me the capability that this does.
Mhm.
And then security comes along, 2, 3, 5 years later when you go, oh, that was bad. I probably need to go back and fix this,
Yeah.
which in turn creates its own problems of we've been using it this way for 5 years, and now putting security means we have to completely change the way we do business.
That's totally on point. And another aspect of this is that people have become used to the idea that if I do it in the cloud, it's going to be happening really, really fast. That's kind of the promise of the cloud. And people like Josh and I, sitting on the side and say, yeah, but be careful here. The trouble is that you can't go back.
Mhm.
I don't think this is, I don't think we can roll back, get the toothpaste back into the tube and say, okay, from now on, when you want to power up a cloud thing, you have to open a ticket and get permissions and we're back to the okay, and it's going to take you a month until you get through all the committees that approve it. I don't think that's likely to be accepted. So what the security industry needs to do and is doing, this is what we are doing at AlgoSec, is that we need to find ways to have our cake and eat it too. So basically injecting security practice into these fast-moving, agile DevSecOps type pipelines that don't introduce long lags when there's no need to.
Mhm.
Basically, you want to take a pipeline for that goes from development to production and inject the security gating into that pipeline that the developers know and like, such that the security checks happen automatically, and only if they fail, then you get a delay because you need a human in the loop to make a judgment call. Is this acceptable in our organization or not? But in like 95% of the time, when whatever is being pushed in the pipeline is sort of more of the same, then security should not stop it. Just automatically bless it and say, fine, we've seen 6 of those. It's in the guidelines. It's in the guardrails. That's yet another instance of whatever we are used to. So fine, we don't even need to look at it. It's the machine says it's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the things that when you look at cloud, it has democratized the ability to do IT. And by that, I mean, anybody with one of these can spin up their own environment. You do not have to be an IT expert. You don't need to be a cybersecurity expert. You just need to have a credit card. And you log into insert platform here, plop your card down, and now you are running, IT infrastructure with or without your organization's permission or knowledge. And if you're not the really, really smart person in the room who puts security first, you're going to focus on making the thing work to do the thing you want to do.
Let's just talk about now what good cloud security looks like. Let's say, we have our environment spun up, the organization has shifted, there's no going back. Take me through kind of a prescriptive tactical approach to what good cloud security looks like.
Well, you can take it in many different ways, but I said earlier, you need to start with some kind of visibility that gives you just a basic check. Just find out all the things that you have to worry about and see that you know what they are and how bad things are at a glance. Now, once you have that, then you need to go one step further or 2 steps further and do more. One of the things that I think deserve more attention that they're getting is that the fact that your cloud environment is connected to your non-cloud environment. If
Mhm.
you're an enterprise customer, you're not a little startup that is completely born in the cloud. You're a major company, sales in the billions. You have a big environment that's not in the cloud, and that is connected to what is in the cloud. The cloud is not an island. And you need to worry about that connection. You need to worry about those networks. And you need to check that what you're doing in the cloud does not disrupt what you're doing on premise and vice versa. So you need some kind of hybrid visibility into the networking part so that you see the whole picture. So that's one thing that deserves attention. And it's hard. It's hard both technically and it's hard from a human / organizational silo point of view, because you have different people involved and they have different reporting structures and different styles and different geographies and different ages and different educations. And sometimes you have a clash of cultures. So it's
Interesting.
hard, but you still need to do it. If you're not thinking about it, then you're not doing it, then you're definitely doing something bad. The other thing that is worth mentioning is, and when you look at just the cloud side of things, a lot of the solutions out there really focus on, let's call it low-level things. So you have a server that is insecure because it's running vulnerable code, and it's insecure because it's connected to the internet without proper filtering, and it's insecure because of 6 other things. But you don't have the context of what application is that server part of. A server is just a piece. It's not the whole thing. That server connects to a queue, that connects to a Lambda, that has a role, that has permissions, that can fire up something else, that can send something, put something else in a database. That you start spidering out, and you find out that that one server that you've looked at is a component in a much bigger thing. And it's really important to know what that bigger thing is. And it's also really difficult to know what that piece is, because people don't, that kind of organization knowledge kind of dissipates because the people that set it up are no longer here, documentation is not right. And so you have stuff that magically works, but nobody knows what it's doing. And then you're in these unpleasant situations where your scanner du jour says that you have a problem on resource X, and you say, okay, fine, I need to patch it, upgrade it, shut it down. Who do I need to ask permission from when I do that? Who needs to approve my downtime? And is it okay to do it tomorrow, or should I have to wait until Sunday? If I don't know what it's for, that's a problem. So I think that getting this application context to all of these cloud resources and their problems is also key.
Yeah. I would add to kind of obvious point is you have to be very surgical. And I always say start with the business requirement first. Like, what are you trying to do that supports the business? If it doesn't support the business, why are you doing it in the first place? And then once you figure out what's it doing to support the business, then you also have identified your key stakeholders, the person who possibly owns it, the person who's going to scream if I turn the box off. And that's when you start doing the, more technical piece of spiraling out and going, okay, this is the business purpose. Now I want to turn everything that's not related to that business purpose off or secure it in some way. But you can't do that if you don't know what it's doing, what the idea behind that system is. And that's kind of gets lost in a lot of cybersecurity folks where they go, I want to secure, I want to secure, I want to secure it. That's great, but sometimes risk is part of life. Risk is part of business. And there are things that we might decide that, I'm willing to take this risk because the reward for it is greater than what my risk is. I like to use retailers, particularly in the, November through January timeframe. Retailers are not going to do any kind of patching during that time frame because even seconds of downtime is thousands and thousands of dollars. So they're making a educated choice of risk, but that's because they understand what the business requirement of that device is, not just the technical bits and bytes of the device.
Yeah. But you're totally right. But what you're describing in your prescriptive approach, which is, I agree, the right way of looking at things, is that this sort of describes a greenfield situation where you start with, I don't have anything working, and now
Mhm.
I'm designing, the new gizmo that I'm going to put up. And then I think about it, I plan it, I have a project, I know who's responsible, and I build all this out, and I ask security what they think and take care of what they tell me. And I document everything properly, and everybody's absolutely happy. And that does happen occasionally. But what we're seeing at AlgoSec is a lot of brownfield
Mhm.
where you're the poor security guy and you're thrown into something way, way after the horses have left the barn. And all the people that did all that beautiful planning work that you alluded to are doing other things, maybe no longer with the company, and nobody knows anything anymore, but the system is working. And now figure out in retrospect, what that thing was, what the plan was.
Mhm.
Was there a plan? Was the shadow IT that got blessed into production without anybody giving it too much thought? So this discovery piece of a brownfield situation is really crucial to have as a tool in your toolbox for all those non-ideal cases where people did things in an unstructured way.
To your point, it's one of those things that becomes very complicated, particularly if it's not well documented. Because I go, yes, these are the settings I want to have because they're secure, and then you turn off something as simple as LDAP because the security guide says if you're running a Linux box, you turn LDAP off because it is a vulnerable, you know, capability. But then you don't realize that they're running single sign-on using LDAP, and now you've isolated that box.
Yep.
So it becomes kind of squirrely when you go, particularly in brownfield environments where, yeah, you want to use the discovery tool and go, okay, these are all the things wrong. Let me go fix them. But you have to be very iterative in that approach and, not go too big too fast and try to fix everything. You got to, you know, be incremental in it because you are in a brownfield and it's running an operation. And you
Yep.
don't want to inadvertently, crash your company because you clicked a button and it broke everything.
Yeah. And then there's always the question of information security versus job security.
It's interesting to me because you're mentioning a lot of things that, from the human side of things, may potentially slip. How does one become skilled enough to recognize those nuances with regards to the scenarios and situations, real life scenarios and situations?
There's a great body of knowledge that very few people have in their heads. Okay. I don't count myself as one of those people that knows these things. I know that there's a lot of things out there that even internally at AlgoSec IT we use and I don't know about and I don't understand. For sure, there are lots of them. And I don't think anybody has the picture of all of that in their heads. And there's a great skill gap in the market. People with even a passing understanding of what all these things are hard to find. That being said, there are guidelines and procedures and documents and systems and tools that can help us
Mhm.
that don't know everything. And by us I mean pretty much everybody on the planet. I don't know, but if I run something, it will tell me that there are these things that I'm doing wrong, and
Mhm.
it's telling me that because it's relying on the common understanding of lots of other people that have specific knowledge of whatever it's complaining about, and it's aggregating all of that and bubbling it up to me and saying, that thing is not right, and the context is that thing belongs to this bigger thing, which belongs to this application, which has a name, which you can recognize as part of your business. So you have the context. So it's not like
Yeah.
it's not hopeless. It's far from hopeless. It's
Yeah.
there's a lot out there to help people.
Mhm.
They just have to know that number one, they don't know everything without the tooling, and number two, they should get the tooling.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of spin this in a looking at it retrospectively with another thing that's common in IT cybersecurity. And, you know, I'll use, CI's benchmarks or DISA pick your flavor, whichever one you want, but they've been out for 20, 30 years. It's something, endpoint device hardening is something we've known for decades to do. Go into an environment and actually assess endpoints, and the vast majority of them are not going to be remotely hardened because it's something that's typically just hard to do. It's not that we don't know to do it. It's that there's not great tooling out there that makes it easy, that makes it manageable, that makes it trackable. And we're now getting into that spot with cloud where we have lots of body of knowledge that says this is what you're supposed to do. But sometimes it's hard. And sometimes you're worried that if I flip this switch from, yes to no, that's going to break it something, and I'm not going to know why it broke. I'm just going to know that it broke because I went and I changed 100 settings at one time because I'm trying to, secure my network. And then you have this thing where you're in kind of a decision paralyzation scenario where I want to secure things, but I don't want to break things. So I just sit here and go, I don't know what to do. And that's where having the proper tooling that comes in to help you make those informed decisions and do something in a kind of iterative process that makes sense for your business.
I know we have a few minutes left, but I did want to touch on a term that intrigued me called double layered cloud security.
Mm.
And when I heard this, I was like, okay, I've heard my fair share of terms in the security industry. Avi, can you give me a little bit of insight as to what double layered cloud security is?
I sort of mentioned it in passing without stating that terms explicitly, but basically it says having a cloud security posture management solution that tells you about all the things that you've configured incorrectly or insecurely is not enough. And so that would be your first layer. And your second layer is worrying about the networking, especially the networking as it connects your cloud environment to your on-premise environment and all these network-related risks, which, to give a specific example, things like the CIS benchmark basically almost gloss over. If you look at the CIS benchmark and its ilk, controlling networks comes down to something like 3 mandates. Thou shall not allow all traffic, only allow management traffic from places something like that. That's what you need to do, which is excellent advice, but far from everything you need to worry about. So the second layer is the network security part, where we at AlgoSec have over the years accumulated, 150 other things that you need to do to make sure that your networking is secure, and that is relevant in cloud security just as it used to be in non-cloud environments. That's what we mean by that.
Are there any success stories that you've seen or experiences you've seen with regards to this approach using double layered cloud security that you could share with us?
Well, certainly we have customers that use this and see great benefit of, they're looking at all the networking definitions that they have in their cloud environments. And all of a sudden they're seeing that, these things are way too open. I need to fix this. I need to fix that. We have customers, major enterprises using this capability and managing thousands or multiple thousands of security groups, even in one cloud provider environment. And there's a lot of things to find there.
All right, so we're at the top of the hour, but I do want to open up the forum for both of you. Maybe Josh, you have a question for Avishai. Avishai, you have a question for Josh. Again, this is an organic conversation, so if there's anything kind of top of mind that we didn't touch base on that you'd like to know, this is your time.
So, Avi, I have a great question for you. If you're getting into cloud, you've come in an organization, you have a brownfield, what's the first thing that you do to assess kind of where you are from a security posture.
Well, I can share what, me wearing a sort of CISO hat in our own company, which is, we also use the cloud as customers, and we're doing things. So we deploy a CSPM solution. So the first thing that I ask my guys and girls is, are all our accounts onboarded into this solution? Okay, it's surprising how many times you have to ask that question because the number of accounts grows. Just today, I was on a call and said, as far as I know, we have 102 cloud. No, we actually have 120 since a month ago. Oh, interesting. Are all of them onboarded into our own tooling to oversee them? Let me check. Okay, it's kind of important to know. And then, okay, we have them onboarding. Did you look at the findings? How many findings do we have? How many critical findings do we have? How many public IP addresses are we advertising? And is that the order of magnitude of that number reasonable? Ballpark. We have X employees in the company and we have Y services that we provide to our customers in the cloud. Do we really need so many public IP addresses, or could those be private? Questions like that are easy to ask, not so easy to answer sometimes.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a really insightful episode, and you are always welcome back to the show. This has been another episode of Audience First. We are out.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Audience First. If you like what you've heard, feel free to follow or subscribe to Audience First on Apple, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast streamers.